They say silence is safe, that if you keep your head down and your mouth shut, the storm will pass over you. But what if keeping silent means allowing injustice to walk away unchallenged? And what if the one person who speaks up ends up being threatened by the very people sworn to protect us? Before we dive in, tell me, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I'm so curious to know where this story is reaching you. Now listen closely, because this isn't just a headline. This could have been any of us. This was supposed to be just another evening for Jordan Miles. 26 years old, part-time delivery driver, full-time dreamer, just trying to make ends meet. He didn't look for trouble. Never had. He wasn't an activist or a loud voice in the streets. He was just a guy who kept his head down, trying to survive in a city where the wrong glance could earn you the wrong kind of attention. It was a Wednesday midweek, mundane and muggy. Jordan had just finished dropping off an order at the far end of his delivery route. He was tired, thinking of the leftovers waiting in his fridge and the 2 hours of sleep he might be able to catch before his next shift. His car, a beat-up silver Corolla with a fading bumper sticker that read, "Protect each other," rattled as he turned onto Chestnut Avenue, a street known more for its potholes than anything political. That's when he saw the lights, red and blue, flashing like a warning from the heavens. Up ahead, 3 squad cars had someone pulled over. Nothing new. He'd seen this 100 times. But this felt different. There was yelling, aggression. A young man was pressed against the hood of his car. 2 officers surrounded him, barking questions, while a third kept glancing around, as if checking for an audience. Jordan's foot hovered over the brake. He knew better. But something gnawed at him. This didn't look right. He pulled to the curb, about 30 feet away, and shut off his headlights. Quietly, cautiously, he reached for his phone and hit record. The camera zoomed in slightly. The man being questioned, maybe 19, maybe younger, was trembling. He kept his hands up, kept saying, "I didn't do anything. I told you I was just driving home." One officer shoved him hard against the hood. Another patted him down, aggressively, like he was trying to prove a point. Jordan's breath caught in his throat. His fingers shook slightly. He told himself it was just nerves. But then one of the officers, tall, bald, broad-chested, turned and made eye contact with him. That's when Jordan knew he'd been seen. The officer broke from the group and started walking toward Jordan's car. No hesitation. Purpose in every step. Jordan's instinct screamed to drive off, but he froze. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was both. A hard knock on the driver's side window made him flinch. "Step out of the car," the officer said. Jordan's heart pounded. He kept his phone rolling, screen down on his lap, just in case. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "You watching something, son?" the officer growled. "Recording my scene?" Jordan didn't answer right away. His silence was all the answer the officer needed. "You want to play reporter? Think you know the law? Step out. Now!" Jordan complied. Slowly, carefully. He knew sudden movements were dangerous. He stepped out, hands visible, just like his mom had taught him. The officer's name tag read G. Talbot. That name would later be all over the news. But at that moment, it was just another badge, another threat behind a uniform. Officer Talbot leaned in close. Too close. Jordan could smell his cologne, heavy and sharp. He smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "You know what happens to people who stick their nose in where it doesn't belong?" he said, low enough that his fellow officers didn't hear. Jordan didn't respond. "I could say you were interfering. I could say you reached for something. I could say a lot of things." Jordan blinked, slowly. "I'm just watching," he said, "just making sure everything's okay." Talbot's smile widened. "You people think you've got power now, huh? With your phones and your TikToks and your hashtags. But let me tell you something. None of that matters when nobody sees what happens next." Jordan swallowed hard. "You threatening me?" "No, son. Just educating you. Consider this the lesson." What Talbot didn't realize was that the lesson was being recorded by his own microphone. His body mic, still running from the earlier stop, was capturing every word, every threat, every syllable soaked in racism and arrogance. And while he may have believed he was untouchable in that moment, that belief would soon crumble. But in the now, Jordan was terrified. "Am I free to go?" he asked. Talbot gave him a long, dangerous look. "Then step back. You got a family, son." "Yeah." "Then think about them next time before you start recording." Jordan got back in his car. He didn't start right away. He sat there, shaking, trying to control his breathing, trying to process what had just happened. The officers went back to their stop. The young man they detained was now sitting on the curb, handcuffed, head down. Jordan didn't know what would happen to him, but he knew he couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. He drove off, cautiously, eyes scanning the rear view. When he got home, he uploaded the footage from his phone to a cloud account, just in case. But that footage, the footage he'd risked his safety to get, wasn't what changed everything. It was what Officer Talbot had forgotten. A week later, while Internal Affairs conducted their routine review of body cam footage, standard for any stop that ended in detainment, a junior analyst noticed something strange in the audio file. The timestamp didn't match the visual. There was a minute of sound recorded after the visual had ended. Curious, the analyst kept listening, and what he heard made his blood run cold. Talbot's threats, the racial slurs, the blatant abuse of power. It wasn't speculation. It wasn't secondhand. It was him, caught in his own words. On his own mic, the analyst reported it immediately. Within hours, the file was shared up the chain. But someone, somewhere, hesitated. Perhaps it was fear. Politics. Protect the badge culture. But it only takes one person to break the silence. The file was leaked to a journalist at a small, independent news site. Anonymously. No names. No warning. Just one sentence. The mic was still on. Within 24 hours, the clip had spread across the internet like wildfire. Jordan watched it from his phone, hands trembling once again. But this time for a different reason. It was real. He wasn't crazy. He hadn't imagined the threat. And now the world knew. Talbot had become a symbol. A face not just of one bad cop, but an entire system built on silence, intimidation, and unchecked power. The city tried to get ahead of it. The police department issued a vague statement. "We are aware of the footage and have launched an internal investigation." But it was too late. The internet had already decided. Jordan Miles, the witness Talbot had tried to intimidate, was now the center of a story bigger than himself. And in the days that followed, he would have to make a choice. Stay in the shadows, or step into the light. The audio leaked on a Tuesday. Quietly, anonymously, no headlines, no networks. Just a simple MP3 file and 6 fateful words. The mic was still on. At first, it circulated on small corners of the internet. Twitter threads from independent journalists, TikTok duets with somber expressions and captions like, "You need to hear this." Reddit lit up with speculation. Who was the voice? What city was this? Was it real? Then, a TikTok creator with 1 million followers uploaded a breakdown of the full recording. She captioned it. He thought nobody would hear, but we all did. It exploded. 12 million views in 24 hours. The audio hit different. It wasn't muffled or vague. It was clear. Officer Talbot's voice, sharp and steady, dripped with control. "You people think you got power now, huh?" There it was. Naked. No need for interpretation. No need for video to fill in the blanks. The world didn't see Jordan's face, didn't know his name, but they heard his fear in the silence. They felt the danger in Talbot's casual cruelty. Hashtag surged. Hashtag Mike was still on. Hashtag Officer Talbot. Hashtag Protect Witness X. Journalists raced to trace the leak. The police department scrambled to contain the fallout. Official spokespeople refused to name the officer, even though online sleuths had already matched the voice to Officer Gregory Talbot, a 14-year veteran with 3 prior complaints of misconduct, all dismissed. The mayor held a press conference within 48 hours of the leak. "We are taking this matter seriously," she said. "The department has opened a formal investigation. Officer Talbot has been placed on paid administrative leave pending review." Paid leave, That word stuck in people's throats like ash. Across town, Jordan sat in his apartment, watching the press conference on his phone. Curtains drawn. Lights off. His phone buzzed every few minutes. Messages from friends, old classmates, even distant cousins he hadn't heard from in years. None of them knew it was him, and he wanted to keep it that way. He hadn't asked to be a symbol. He hadn't signed up to be a headline. He was just trying to get home that night. But something had shifted in the city. You could feel it on the sidewalks, in coffee shop murmurs, on radio call-ins. The rage wasn't just about Talbot. It was about all the Talbots, all the quiet threats, all the microphones that weren't left on. Protests began by the weekend. Not massive, not yet, but steady, intentional. Signs read, "We heard him." Do you? One woman, tears in her eyes, stood on a corner with a cardboard sign that said, "I was witness X once too." Meanwhile, the department's internal affairs team launched what they called a thorough and impartial investigation. But few trusted them. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. Then came the online threats. Not to Jordan yet, but to the leaker. Police union reps condemned the leak as a betrayal of due process. Some officers reportedly began checking their own body cam devices more aggressively. Paranoia set in. And Jordan? He was living a dual life. By day, he continued delivering groceries, eyes on the mirrors, always. By night, he scrolled through endless posts about the voice he knew too well, the fear he still carried. He hadn't told anyone, not even his sister. But that secret couldn't last forever. That Friday, a woman named Delia Sharp, freelance journalist, truth seeker, and local firebrand, left a cryptic tweet. "If you are witness X, I just want to talk. I can protect your identity, but your story deserves to be heard." DM open. Jordan stared at the tweet for hours. His thumb hovered over the screen. He typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, at 2:16 a.m., he sent just 2 words. "It's me." Delia's reply was instant. She didn't push, didn't pry, just said, "When you're ready, we'll do it on your terms." They met in a parking lot, not for drama, but for privacy. She brought no camera crew, just a notebook, her voice recorder, and eyes that didn't flinch when he told her everything. He played her the original phone video, the one from his car. He told her what Talbot said when he leaned into the window. He told her how it felt to be looked at not like a citizen, but like a threat. Delia didn't interrupt. She listened like every word mattered. When the interview aired, still anonymous, his face blurred, his voice filtered, it hit people hard. Hearing the story from him, not just from a leaked clip, changed everything. He wasn't just witness X anymore. He was a person, with a name, a job, a family, a life interrupted by one man's abuse of power. Jordan's story became the tipping point. The mayor, now under intense pressure, announced a citywide review of officer conduct procedures. Independent oversight groups were called in. Civil rights attorneys began circling the department like sharks. Meanwhile, Talbot stayed silent. No interviews, no statements. But his lawyer spoke on his behalf. "My client was under stress. He regrets any misunderstanding. We must remember, officers are human too." A misunderstanding. The clip was replayed again. On nightly news, on late-night talk shows, in student classrooms. It was dissected by legal experts, psychologists, activists. Each time, that same sentence echoed like a warning from the future. "You people think you've got power now, huh?" At a rally on the courthouse steps, a 10-year-old girl stood at the mic and repeated the line, trembling. "That's what they think of us," she said, tears welling up. "That's what they say when they think nobody's listening." But the world was listening now. Jordan watched the rally online, heart pounding. He'd done this. He'd lit the match. But instead of flames, something unexpected caught fire. Hope. That weekend, the threats came. His address was posted in a now-deleted forum. An unmarked envelope showed up in his mailbox. No note, just a single photo of his car. Jordan sat on his bed that night, scrolling through messages. Dozens of strangers had sent their support. Some said he was brave. Others said he was a target. A few just said, "Thank you." He couldn't sleep, couldn't rest. By Sunday, he knew what he had to do. He called Delia. "I want to go public," he said. "You sure?" she asked. "No," he admitted, "but it's time." She paused and said, "Well, do it your way. All of it." The announcement came Monday morning. A simple post. "I am witness X. My name is Jordan Miles. I have nothing to hide, but some people clearly do." Within hours, his name was trending worldwide. TV crews parked outside his building. The police department offered him protection. He declined. He wasn't afraid anymore, because fear had already tried to silence him, and lost. But the real battle was just beginning. As Talbot prepared to face formal charges and public scrutiny, the department found itself cornered. Community leaders demanded action. Protesters called for full reform. And the public? The public was watching now, watching every move, every statement, every attempt to rewrite what they all heard with their own ears. And as the pressure mounted, Jordan Miles became more than just a witness. He became a reminder that the system only wins when we stop listening. And this time, the mic was still on. It was no longer just about an audio clip. The moment Jordan Miles revealed his identity, the story evolved from anonymous outrage to personal reckoning. He wasn't just a soundbite, a blurred face behind distortion. He was real now. And for some, that changed everything. His name was on television. His photo was on the front page of the local paper, flanked by the headline, "Witness X Speaks Out." For his supporters, he was a hero. For his critics, especially those hiding behind screen names, he became a target. But Jordan didn't waver. He started attending protests. Not in disguise, not hidden under a hoodie. He stood right there on the front line, holding a sign that read, "I am not your threat." Cameras followed him. Microphones hovered. But his voice stayed calm. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. He simply told the truth. And the truth was undeniable now. The police department, scrambling to repair its image, had no choice but to suspend Officer Gregory Talbot without pay. Internal Affairs made a vague announcement about disciplinary recommendations, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The city wanted accountability. And for the first time in years, there was momentum behind that demand. The district attorney, under growing pressure from the mayor's office and the public, took the rare step of launching a criminal investigation into Talbot's conduct. It wasn't just about what was said, it was about the pattern, the history, the 3 prior complaints that were dismissed without explanation, the way the department had closed ranks to protect one of its own. Jordan sat in his apartment, watching the DA's press conference on a cracked iPad. "No one is above the law," the DA said, lips tight. "Not even those who wear a badge." It was a statement, sure. But Jordan knew better than confuse words with justice. He'd seen how systems worked, how they protected themselves. But this time, the system had underestimated the power of a voice that had been silenced too long. Meanwhile, the city was changing. There were murals now. Street artists painted Jordan's silhouette beside the words, "Still on mic." At schools, teachers asked students how they would have felt in Jordan's shoes. Debates exploded online. News anchors clashed over whether Talbot deserved grace or punishment. One viral clip showed a former cop turned commentator saying, "He made a mistake, sure, but that doesn't make him a racist." The internet fired back with fire and fury, because that's what people didn't understand. It wasn't just one mistake. It was the smirk in Talbot's voice, the calculation, the power play, the pattern that so many black men like Jordan recognized all too well. Jordan got emails from strangers around the country. Some shared their own stories. Others just said they believed him. But not all messages were supportive. A letter arrived in his mailbox with no return address. Inside was a single bullet, taped to it. "You talk too much." He turned it over to the authorities, but they offered little reassurance. He wasn't surprised, but he was tired. One night, while sitting at his kitchen table, Jordan stared at the unopened bottle of whiskey on the counter. It had been there for months, gifted to him by a co-worker after a long shift. He thought about drinking it, letting the numbness take over. Instead, he picked up his phone. He went live. No script. No notes. Just raw honesty. "Some days," he said, staring into the camera, "I wish I just stayed quiet. It would have been easier, safer. But then I remember I wasn't the one who crossed the line. I wasn't the one with hate in my heart. I was just trying to survive." His voice cracked. "And now, I just want to live." That video got 5 million views in 3 days. Even people who'd never heard the leaked audio now knew his name, knew his eyes, knew the cost of courage. And behind the scenes, preparations were underway because Officer Gregory Talbot was going to be charged. The DA announced it officially 1 week later. "We will be filing charges of misconduct, abuse of authority, and intimidation of a witness." The courtroom became a symbol, not just a legal reckoning, but of everything the community had endured and demanded. Reporters lined up before dawn. Protesters gathered on the courthouse steps, chanting, "Mike's still on. We still here." Inside, Jordan sat in the front row, not as a defendant, not as a suspect, but as a man demanding dignity. Talbot entered the courtroom with his head high, flanked by lawyers. He didn't look at Jordan, not once, but Jordan watched him closely. This wasn't just a man who threatened him. This was every man who had ever abused a badge and walked away without consequence. Talbot pled not guilty. His lawyers argued that the audio had been taken out of context. They claimed Jordan had been uncooperative and that Talbot's words were part of a tense situation. But the jury wasn't buying it. Neither was the public. Clips from the courtroom aired nightly. Social media dissected every angle, every expression, every word. And in a city once divided, something unexpected began to happen. People started listening, not just to Jordan, but to each other. Black parents held workshops to teach their children how to survive traffic stops. White allies created coalitions to push for reform. Young activists started petitions for mandatory body cam audits and racial sensitivity training. The city had reached its boiling point, and Jordan, once an invisible man in the system's shadow, had become a beacon. But the trial was only part of the fight. One night, outside the courthouse, a small group of counter-protesters showed up with signs that read, "Support our police." Jordan didn't flinch. He stepped forward and asked the man holding the biggest sign, "You support all police? Or just the ones who get caught?" The man didn't answer, because there was no answer. Truth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence. But that silence, Jordan knew, was progress, because silence meant people were thinking. And that was the first step toward change. As the trial wore on, the evidence piled up, the prior complaints against Talbot, the body cam inconsistencies, the audio leak that started it all. And then, something unprecedented happened. A fellow officer took the stand. She'd worked with Talbot for years. And under oath, with a shaking voice, she admitted that she'd heard him make racist remarks before. He always said them quietly, she testified, when no one was recording. But someone had recorded. This time, the courtroom held its breath. Jordan sat there, tears slipping down his cheeks, not from pain, but from the weight of vindication. For once, the system hadn't closed ranks. For once, truth stood a fighting chance. And when the trial concluded and the jury was dismissed as deliberate, the city held its breath. Jordan walked outside, surrounded by cameras and reporters. He didn't say much, just one sentence. "I just want the truth to matter." And somewhere, in homes across the nation, people whispered to their screens, "So do we." The city held its breath. In the days leading up to the verdict, everything slowed down. Schools stayed open, but barely. Offices told employees they could work from home. Storefronts boarded up their windows, not out of fear, but out of memory. Because cities remember. Cities bruise. And this one remembered what happened the last time justice was promised, but not delivered. Jordan Miles sat in his apartment again, staring out the window at a street that looked different than it had a few months ago. There were more murals now, more cameras, more voices raised. And his name? His name was everywhere. But this was the part no one prepared him for, the waiting. The jury had been out for 17 hours. No one knew what they were thinking. They were ordinary people, 9 women, 3 men, each carrying the weight of the city on their shoulders. And then the phone rang. It was his lawyer. "They're ready," she said. "They've reached a verdict." Jordan didn't respond right away. He just breathed, long and slow, because this was it. This was the moment that would either prove that truth could still matter in America, or that it didn't. The courtroom was packed. Media vans outside formed a tight row. Protesters and supporters stood side by side in an uneasy silence. There were signs held up high. "Justice for Jordan." Mic still on. "We believe." Inside, the air was thick. Talbot sat stiffly at the defense table, his tie perfectly knotted, his jaw clenched. He hadn't spoken publicly once throughout the entire trial. His lawyers had done all the talking. But now the city would speak. The bailiff called everyone to rise. The jury filed in. Jordan didn't blink. His heart thudded, so loud it was all he could hear. The 4 women stood. In the matter of the state versus Gregory Talbot, she began, her voice firm. "On the charge of misconduct in office, we find the defendant guilty." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Jordan exhaled sharply. "On the charge of abuse of authority, guilty." Another shockwave. Talbot stared ahead, frozen, pale, and on the charge of intimidation of a witness, guilty. It was done. Jordan didn't cry. Not then. He just closed his eyes and whispered something only he could hear. "Thank you." The judge called for order, banging her gavel twice. But it was useless. People were crying, hugging. Reporters scrambled to get their headlines out. Breaking. Officer Talbot found guilty on all charges. The city had waited for justice. And for once, it didn't have to wait in vain. But the story didn't end there. Because justice isn't just about verdicts. It's about what comes next. 2 weeks later, the sentencing hearing began. The prosecution asked for the maximum sentence, 10 years, citing not only Talbot's actions against Jordan, but the department's long-standing pattern of ignoring his behavior. They brought up the prior complaints, the racial slurs, the intimidation tactics. The defense asked for leniency, pointing out Talbot's years of service, and arguing that the system had failed both men. But when Jordan took the stand for the final time, he didn't speak about punishment. He spoke about healing. "I'm not here to celebrate anyone's downfall," he said. "But I do believe people should be held accountable, especially those who wear a badge. Because trust doesn't come with a uniform. You earn it." He paused, his voice trembling. "And when someone uses that badge to silence, to scare, to threaten, they don't just fail one person. They fail a whole city." The judge listened. And when she finally spoke, her voice was like iron wrapped in velvet. "Mr. Talbot, you had power, and you used it to intimidate someone whose only crime was witnessing the truth. This court does not take that lightly." She sentenced him to 8 years in state prison. And with that, the chapter closed. But the movement kept going. Jordan returned home that night to a neighborhood that had transformed. Kids on bikes waved at him. Neighbors nodded with respect. A local restaurant renamed a menu item after him. The Witness Burger. It was silly, but it made him laugh. And laughter? That had been in short supply lately. Soon, news came that the department's leadership had resigned. A new police chief was appointed, one who promised independent oversight, transparency, and community engagement. Jordan was invited to serve on the review board. At first, he hesitated. He didn't want to become the guy from that case. But then he realized something. He already was. And maybe that wasn't a bad thing. So he joined, and he listened to parents, to students, even to officers who wanted change but didn't know how to speak up. He wasn't just a witness anymore. He was a voice, and people listened. He gave talks at schools, sat on panels. He even testified before the state legislature on police accountability reform. And slowly, changes began to take root. Body cam footage was now reviewed by independent committees. Complaints couldn't be buried in closed files anymore. And most importantly, whistleblowers like Jordan were protected, not silenced. One night, he went live again, same way he had months earlier. This time, the tone was different. I didn't expect any of this, he said. All I wanted was to make it home that night. But the truth has a way of growing, of reaching people, of changing things. He smiled. Now I just hope we keep going. Because this can't end with me. It has to start with us. The comments rolled in, faster than he could read them. You saved lives, Jordan. Thank you for your voice. Mike's still on. And just like that, the story became something bigger than a courtroom battle. It became a reminder. That power unchecked is dangerous. That silence is a tool of the oppressor. That sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to be quiet to set a city free. As for Officer Talbot, he vanished from the headlines quickly. People moved on. But Jordan stayed. Not as a symbol, not as a martyr, but as a man. Still walking the streets, still telling the truth. And somewhere in another city, another person listens to his story and thinks, if he could speak, maybe I can too.